Hello, this is my field assignment video on the Yellowstone National Park. I have taken a virtual tour in this national park due to COVID reasons, me being sick for the past 2 weeks, but also because the park is actually uh, a few states away, so it would take a very long time just to reach the park. However, though, the virtual tour I have taken, I've learned a lot about this park and the numerous wildlife and plant species inside it. I learned that this national park actually sits on a dormant volcano. And here is a picture of me on the virtual tour. But moving on to the questions, what kind of habitat makes up the park? And the Yellowstone National Park is primarily found in the taiga region or the boreal forests. And this biome has very cold, dry winters and very short, cool, and wet summers. And because of the heavy snow here, um, the mountain meadows often remain very moist throughout the whole year, and this is also why these summers are very cool. Um, but the habitats range from small glades to even grasslands of 1,000 acres. Moving on, are there any endangered species within this park? Yes, there are, but actually there are too many endangered species that actually live here. Too many to go through and explain why. But I've brought up five that I did want to talk about, and those five are the first one being the grizzly bear, or the Ursus arctos horribilis. The grizzly bear is actually the most well-known endangered animal species there in Yellowstone, and it was endangered because their habitat was lost due to logging and mining, oil and gas drilling, and land development that got more land, but as we obtained more land, these grizzly bears actually lost a lot of land because of this, and a lot of grizzly deaths also occur because of human-caused mortality, like in cases where a grizzly bear will approach a human and they will feel threatened, and the human will kill them in means of self-defense. But this does add up to the amount of mortality rates within the grizzly bears. Moving on to the second endangered species, it is the gray wolf or the timber wolf, but its scientific name is called the Canis lupus. They were actually endangered all the way up until October 2020, just 2 months ago, actually, and they were removed from the Endangered Species Act because now they are not considered to be that severely endangered, but they were endangered previously because of hunting. Many people were hunting them, and they were hunting them because many would believe that these wolves were the reason why their livestock were found dead. So many would hunt and kill them. Moving on to the third animal, it is the Canada lynx, or the Lynx canadensis, and this animal is it is protected under the Endangered Species Act, and it is actually considered severely endangered throughout the lower 48 states that this animal is not in, and it is it is declining in these 48 states because of habitat loss, but also because people were hunting and killing them, and this was resulting in their population massively declining. And these animals actually need a lot of land to live and hunt, but as they were losing land, this really put a detriment into how they live. So these animals were then brought to the Yellowstone National Park, and their populations have been increasing. Unfortunately, they have been growing back in size. However, it is still said that their numbers are declining still because it is just not high enough, so they're still considered endangered. Moving on to the fourth endangered animal species, it is the black-footed ferret, and this ferret species is the only native species in North America, and they actually almost went globally extinct in the 1960s due to habitat loss, but also because of a decline in their main source of food. And these animals primarily have a diet of prairie dogs. And during this time, there was a massive decline in prairie dogs, and prairie dogs, their numbers were decreasing. So this not only hurt the prairie dogs, but in tandem, it hurt the black-footed ferrets because this was their main source of food, and now that it was massively declining, it's really hurt them, and it's almost pushed them to extinction. But fortunately, they were moved to the Yellowstone National Park, and it has actually kept them, alive, and has actually saved their species from the brink of extinction. Moving on to the last animal species, it is the pika, or its scientific name is the ocotona. And while they're not an endangered species in this area, they are considered by many scientists and environmentalists. They are being considered to be put on the list of endangered animal species because um, these pikas are very sensitive to temperature. And with the massive rise of climate change and global warming, this will really affect them and put them at risk of possibly becoming endangered. So this is why they are being considered by many to be endangered or should be put as an endangered species. And climate change goes well into the next question. What are some environmental issues facing the park? And climate change is a big thing that is affecting this park. Climate change, it not only increases the temperature, but because it's increasing the temperature, it is increasing the amount of forest fires, both in size and frequency. So these forest fires are happening more often now, and because they are happening so often, this causes a massive decline in air quality, and there is now much more poor air quality than there was before due to these fires, especially during the summers. That is when the air quality is the poorest in the area. But aside from forest fires, it also increases the water temperature, which, would provide optimal conditions for some aquatic invasive species to invade this area and to affect the ecosystem, which isn't good. And on top of that, the increased temperature increases the time it takes for the glacier caps at the mountaintops to melt. And in doing this, it changes the timing, the temperature, and it could change, it could result in the loss or relocation of native species. So this is exactly why it is important to protect this park, because it keeps these species from going extinct. Species are actually endangered in this national park, and because they are in this national park where there are measurements taken to keep them from going extinct, they are actually surviving. So by protecting this park, we are protecting these animals and we are protecting them from going extinct. And this is an area now where they can live without the worry of going extinct. So that is why it is important to protect this part. And lastly, the five animal species and plant species that I found while taking a virtual tour in this park, I learned um, the five animal species, the first one being a coyote or a Canis latrans. And this species is often mistaken for wolves, but they are actually one-third the size of wolves, and they are also called song dogs because of their variety of howls and cries and vocalizations they have. The second animal being a bobcat or the lynx rufus, and they're often very rarely seen in the national park. However, their colors range from a red-brown fur with indistinct patterns to a light buff with dark spottings. Moving on to the third animal, it is the river otters or the Lantra canadensis, and I learned that these otters are active all year round, and they are able to swim underwater up to 6 miles an hour. And on top of that, they have a waterproof pelt. And I thought that was interesting because they have a waterproof pelt that helps protect them during the cold winters. So I thought that was interesting. Moving on to the fourth animal, it is the bison, or interestingly enough, its scientific name is called the bison. And I learned that the Yellowstone National Park is actually the only place where bison are located where they have not had trouble at all living continuously. They've been able to live here without problems since the prehistoric times. So I thought, that is also another reason why we should protect this park because the bison have managed to live here for so long without trouble. And moving on to the last animal species, it is bats or the Chiroptera. And I learned that they are the only mammals capable of flying. And while I did know they are mammals and they are capable of flying, I never really realized that until just now when I learned it. So I thought that was interesting. And there are actually 13 bat species located in the Yellowstone Park. Moving on to the five plant species. The first one being the lodgepole pine or the Pinus contorta, and it is the most common tree found here. The second plant species being the white bark pine or the Pinus albicollis, and this plant species actually grows in much higher elevated areas, usually with poor soil or with poor soil and high winds. And you know, while they do, it is a harsh environment they are living in. They are actually a key species in this area. Um, moving on to the third plant species, it is a Yellowstone sand verbena or the Abronia amnophylla, and they grow along the shore of the Yellowstone Lake, and they are considered a rare plant. Moving on to the fourth plant species, it is the Yellowstone sulfur flower, or its scientific name being the Eriogonum umbellatum var caldiforum. And I learned that this plant species is actually rapidly evolving. And because it is rapidly evolving and we're finding these different species inside it, its scientific name is constantly changing because we it's constantly evolving. And the last plant species I did want to mention is the big sagebrush or the Artemisia tridentata. Um, and this plant species is actually part of a larger community of the sagebrush species, but it is the most common one found. And I believe that goes over all the questions that I yeah, I believe that is all the questions. So yeah, this is my field assignment video on the Yellowstone National Park. I took a virtual tour there and it was interesting. I learned a lot, and thank you.